The story I'm about to bring you has been breaking my heart for months now. Like some nights I go to sleep and I have no words. I just say, God help. And I really don't even know how to put the sadness I feel in my soul into the right words to do this story justice. But Anna Kasparian, who recently made a guest appearance on the Piers Morgan show, sure does. Roll the clip.
They shoot at people as they're waiting in line for humanitarian aid. Dozens of people get shot and killed literally every single day. Every single day as they're waiting for food. No, I'm not going to let you filibuster, bitch. I'm not going to let you filibuster. I'm not going to let you filibuster. You guys are totally okay with IDF soldiers shooting and killing desperate people waiting for humanitarian aid. You're okay with that. I find it so unbelievably evil. Unbelievably evil. It shocks my conscience and my soul that people as evil as this exist in this world. Okay? Watching these images, looking at these videos, seeing all these kids, desperate, hungry, parentless, trapped in Gaza. And you're sitting here and you're defending it. I can't stand it. I can't listen to it.
Yeah, girl. That is the kind of energy that we all need now from everyone. Hi, my name is Suri Crow, and you are watching the Meidas Touch Network. All right, we are now 22 months into Israel's revenge war against Hamas, and the evidence is undeniable. The Israeli government is committing genocide against the Palestinian people, against innocent civilians. And that is not my opinion. That is based on the UN definition, Article 2, the Genocide Convention. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. A, killing members of the group. B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. E, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. It's also based on several Holocaust genocide scholars' opinions, Jewish ones. And as of this week, it is now the view of two highly respected Israeli humanitarian rights groups, B'Tselem and Physicians for Human Rights Israel.
The report we are publishing today is one we never imagined we would have to write. But in recent months, we have been witnessing a reality that has left us no choice but to acknowledge the truth. Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The report written by us at B'Tselem presents facts, data, and testimonies about how Israel is acting in a deliberate, coordinated, and systematic way to destroy the Palestinians in Gaza.
We documented these developments extensively, and based on a careful legal analysis of the facts, we state, with a heavy heart, this is a genocide. Today, Physicians for Human Rights Israel is publishing a report detailing Israel's actions in Gaza. We focus on Article 2C of the Genocide Convention.
Israel's nonstop bombings and intentional starvation of Palestinian civilians, and I will get to that in a moment, have also led to what experts believe is far more than the 60,000 deaths that are being reported by the Gazan Health Ministry. In fact, according to statistics from The Lancet, which has a formula whereby they extrapolate the actual deaths on a 1-to-4 ratio. So from every known actual reported death, they take a ratio of 3 more to include those who are missing and unrecovered bodies. We calculate the number of actual dead people in Gaza. So the Lancet formula estimates it's almost 230,000 people dead in Gaza. And another analysis estimates that it's almost 400,000 people, at least 377,000. And this is according to Yaakov Garb's report for Harvard Dataverse, which they used the Israeli military's own data and combined these with careful spatial mapping to reveal the demographic horror story. And what they, again, have estimated that at least 377,000 Gazans have disappeared from pre-genocide population of 2.27 million, reducing it to 1.85 million when measured for the study. And these people just didn't go on vacation, y'all. They're dead. More than 90% of the buildings in Gaza have been destroyed. That is another data point to determine whether or not there is a genocide taking place. Yet, despite the overwhelming evidence of, Bibi Netanyahu insists that the Palestinian people, they're not starving.
Israel is presented as though we are applying a campaign of starvation in Gaza. What a bold-faced lie. There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza. We enable humanitarian aid throughout the duration of the war to enter Gaza. Otherwise, there would be no Gazans. And what has interdicted the supply of humanitarian aid is one force, Hamas. Again, the reversal of truth. Hamas robs, steals this humanitarian aid.
Firstly, even Israeli military officials are now conceding that their long-told lie of Hamas stealing food from the aid trucks isn't true, that there is no evidence, and that the UN's aid delivery system, which Israel essentially shut down months ago, was largely effective in providing food to Gaza's desperate population. Okay? Secondly, you take a look at these photos. Do these people not look like they are starving and certainly on the brink of death to you? I mean, use your own eyes. Like Bibi Netanyahu and every fascist, they always tell you, do not believe what your eyes are telling you. Look at these pictures. These people are starving and they are dying every hour. This is gaslighting of the highest magnitude. And it is not just the Palestinian civilians who are now starving, literally to death. It is the journalists from Gaza. It is the healthcare workers in Gaza who were there to document and help their fellow citizens. And they are no longer able to sustain themselves because they have no food. The renowned French news outlet Agence France Presse issued a statement just last week that said it is deeply worried its embedded journalists will die of starvation. And let me remind you that the Israeli government has refused to let international journalists into Gaza. They won't let other journalists from around the world in. Gee, I wonder why. Could it be they don't want the truth of what they are doing to these people to be revealed? They don't want the truth of the horrors they are committing against the Palestinian people to be broadcast to the world, even though we can all see it if you pay attention, certainly not on Western media, which has just whitewashed this story.
And on Monday, this agency, with its storied history as a news organization driven by a mission to report, issued a truly unprecedented statement, declaring that their Palestinian journalists who are living and reporting in Gaza right now are at the risk of starvation due to Israel's blockade of food and humanitarian aid. Quote, AFP has been working with 1 freelance writer, 3 photographers, and 6 freelance videographers in the Gaza Strip since the departure of its staff journalists in early 2024. Along with a few others, they are now the only ones left to report on what is happening in Gaza. We refuse to watch them die. One of them, Bashar, has been a collaborator with AFP since 2010, first as a fixer, then as a freelance photographer, and since 2024 as the main photographer. On Saturday, July 19th, he managed to post a message on Facebook, I no longer have the strength to work for the media. My body is thin and I can't work anymore. Even though these journalists receive a monthly salary from AFP, there is often nothing to buy or prices are outrageously high.
Now, despite there being truckloads of food from NGOs, the United Nations alone reports that it has 6,000 trucks of food and medicine just waiting to get into Gaza. Israel is still blocking or slowing down the delivery of the food and aid. And that is quite intentional. In fact, I did a report a few weeks ago. I will attach it in the link below the description so you can watch it on this new Israeli-backed and American-funded Gaza Humanitarian Foundation super sketch. The AP and the Israeli-based Haaretz news outlets both did investigative reports revealing the horrors behind this so-called humanitarian fund.
To Israelis protesting in the streets in Tel Aviv, we should note, screaming as loud as they can, all en masse, because we are watching a mass casualty event unfold before our eyes. According to the UN, more than 1,000 Palestinians have already been killed just seeking aid in Gaza in a catastrophe fully engineered by the Israeli government with the U.S. backing.
Videos obtained by the Associated Press show American contractors guarding aid distribution sites inside Gaza are using live ammunition and stun grenades as hungry Palestinians scramble for food. 2 U.S. contractors who spoke to us on the condition of anonymity said they were coming out because they were disturbed by what they saw as dangerous and irresponsible practices. Both have extensive military experience. They say the security staff on site were often unqualified, unvetted, and had an open license to do whatever they wished. Their testimonies, combined with videos, text messages, and internal reports seen by the AP, provide a rare glimpse into the workings of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the new, secretive American organization backed by Israel to provide food to the Gaza Strip's population. Journalists have been unable to access the sites, which are located in Israeli military-controlled zones. Since the GHF sites began operating about a month ago, Palestinians say Israeli troops fire nearly every day toward crowds on roads heading to the distribution points through Israeli military zones. Several hundred people have been killed and hundreds more wounded, according to Gaza's health ministry and witnesses. The military has repeatedly said it's fired only warning shots, denies deliberately firing toward civilians.
To be clear, these are starving people on the brink of death, whom the Israeli government is now forcing to walk miles to food distribution sites. These people are showing up with a bucket or a pan, having to walk miles when they themselves are suffering from extreme malnutrition, to walk miles back home to bring it to their families and extended families of often 6 or more people. And while they are waiting there, queued up in these lines, IDF troops, supplemented by American contractors, are allegedly firing into the crowds to keep them in line. It is despicable. Here is former Obama Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes.
First of all, the facts are pretty clear on this. Since the collapse of the first ceasefire that was negotiated in March, Israel restricted all aid getting into the Gaza Strip. That included restrictions on things like baby formula. So that was a policy choice. And so this has been building for months. People have been warning about this for months. They've also kind of dismantled the capacity of the UN aid organization to deliberate into Gaza, and instead created this alternative mechanism, the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is, by all accounts, is not capable of getting aid into Gaza, or not interested necessarily in getting the levels of aid that are needed to get in there. I think the question now is, in response to pressure, you've seen some kind of half measures. So you've seen the resumption of airdrops of food into Gaza. The problem is that's not going to be sufficient to stop what is a kind of cascading effect. Once a critical mass of the population is dealing with malnutrition, you kind of can't put Band-Aids on that with airdrops, which are inefficient ways of getting assistance in. You have to let these several hundred trucks of aid that are parked there on the border drive in. You have to give kind of unfettered access to deal with the scale of starvation. Netanyahu seems to be trying to balance the kind of far right of his coalition that wants to really depopulate Gaza. They say that out loud, and the international pressure he's under.
I mean, honestly, what kind of evil is this? And our American tax dollars are fully supporting it. Oh, and when Benjamin Netanyahu was in D.C. recently, dining on golden platters with Donald Trump at the White House, it was not just MAGA cozying up to him. Take a look at this photo. Senators Cory Booker, Chris Coons, Amy Klobuchar, Adam Schiff, to name a few, all cuddling up to an internationally wanted war criminal. And our Democratic reps are snapping photos and clapping along as they fund his evil campaign against the Palestinian people. And you know why? Because they are bankrolled by AIPAC, dark money doing the bidding of the right-wing fascist Israeli government. which, by the way, wants to ethnically cleanse Gaza and the West Bank. And this has been the plan long before October 7th. That was just the catalyst for Netanyahu and his henchmen to carry out their long-term plans.
But at the same time, you have people in his own government, right? Israeli ministers talking about depopulating Gaza. You have proposals to start to annex parts of Gaza. So that raises the question of, well, what is the purpose of this military operation? And that's one of the reasons why you have those Israeli organizations talking about genocide. You had an Israeli genocide scholar write a similar piece for the New York Times. It's harder to determine what is the end state that Netanyahu is seeking here. Hamas clearly is not what it was on October 7th. And so why is the war going on? And so in Israeli politics, there's a lot of people that want an end to the war. There's an increasing number of people who are concerned about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. But there's also people who kind of want to kind of press forward and literally take the land. And he's yet to reconcile those differences. And time and again, he tends to side with the far right of his coalition because that's what keeps him in power. He's worried about his government collapsing if he loses that far right support, at which point he'd be vulnerable not just to an election, but to potential criminal prosecution, given some charges he faces in Israel.
Israel, by the way, is the largest recipient of U.S. aid by far and above any other country, receiving about $310 billion from the U.S. for military and economic aid since 1946, with $7.8 billion guaranteed for 2025 alone. Oh, and let me remind you that Israeli citizens have universal health care. They don't have to worry or pay for health care. It is a right in Israel, as it is in every other Western nation except for America. They also have heavily subsidized government public education, so they are not saddled with student debt. They can go to school for a nominal amount. And this is because we are bankrolling their military and economic interests. So they don't have to worry about other national costs because Americans are paying for the rest of their huge military and economic interests. Meanwhile, at least 20 million of us are set to lose our healthcare in some way, shape, or form, thanks to Trump and the Republicans' big ugly bill by 2027. And as we know, Republicans have fought tooth and nail to roll back all of President Biden's student debt forgiveness deals, which they've destroyed, I think, almost every one of them. But in Israel, hey, don't worry about it because America, we're paying for you. So, you tell me how this situation is remotely okay, how this makes any sense. We pay for Israelis to have these things, but we don't get them? AIPAC is why. AIPAC. Call your representatives and let them know that this is not okay, that you don't really appreciate your senators and representatives cheesing away while stroking big fat checks with your tax dollars to take care of other nations' people, which is not a problem in of itself. But when we don't have the very things that we're paying for, that's insane. Lastly, I want to leave you with this incredibly compelling clip of esteemed actor Mandy Patinkin and one of my all-time favorite actors ever since I saw The Princess Bride, who with his wife and son recently sat down for a long form interview with the New York Times.
The stranger was next to me. I didn't know who he was, but he had a very distasteful vibe. And I took my baby son and I moved him from my left arm between the stranger and me to my right arm. So my baby would be between Mario Cuomo and me, not between this man. This man got up to speak, and I remembered that he was introduced as the ambassador from Israel to the United Nations. And I remember sitting there because I'd often hear my parents say this phrase on the south side of Chicago in the Jewish community. That's good for the Jews, or that's bad for the Jews. And in my mind, out loud, I heard, that's the definition of what's bad for the Jews. And I didn't know this man. I knew nothing about him. I just knew he was a threat to my child. And later I learned that that man was named Benjamin Netanyahu. And I loved that I had no idea who he was or what his position meant.
You felt the vibes.
I felt it. Then I don't remember exactly when. I think what age. It was a while ago, 10, 15 years ago. I was in Philadelphia. I go up to the hotel room. Catherine was in the hotel room. And the movie, The Princess Bride, was on. She was watching it. And just as I walked in the room is that final scene in the movie where Inigo is sitting by the window with the man in black. And the man in black asks Inigo, would he like to be the next Dread Pirate Robertson? And the Inigo Montoya actor, who was me,
I remember,
at 36 years old, I think, it was 1986, do the math, I was born in 52,
34.
said these words, which I did not really know what they meant, that William Goldman wrote, which I think are the singular greatest words I've ever read. And those words are, were, and always will be. You know, I have been in the revenge business so long. Now that it's over, I do not know what to do with the rest of my life. And I ask Jews all over the world to consider what this man, Benjamin Netanyahu, and his right-wing government is doing to the Jewish people all over the world. They are endangering not only the state of Israel, which I care deeply about and want to exist, but they are endangering the Jewish population all over the world. He is the most dangerous thing, not just since October 7th. It has been a deeply troubled situation. And to watch what is happening for the Jewish people, to allow this to happen to children and civilians of all ages in Gaza, for whatever reason, is unconscionable and unthinkable. And I ask you Jews everywhere, all over the world, to spend some time alone and think, is this acceptable and sustainable? How could it be done to you and your ancestors, and you turn around and you do it to someone else?
Yeah.
I have watched that clip so many times. And every time I watch it, I tear up. It is so powerful. Sorry. Whew. It is so powerful. He just says it for this moment in history of where we are, whether you are a Jew, whether you are a Christian or a Muslim. What is happening there right now is unconscionable. It is an unconscionable sin against humanity. And we have the chance to stand up right now, although it's late in the game, because so many people have been lost, as they have in Ukraine. But we can stand up and make our voices heard. So please let your representatives know where you stand. I don't know. You may not stand where I do, or where most of the globe is right now, where the European Union is now turning more and more and recognizing Palestine as a state and, pressuring Trump. You've got to do more. But like I said, we're humans. Ultimately, we are human beings. And there's nothing Christian, there is nothing godly, whether you are a Christian or a Jew, about what is happening in Palestine, in Gaza right now, or the West Bank for that matter. Just the same way that the atrocities committed by Adolf Hitler, who professed to be a Christian and built his government on Christianity, the same way Vladimir Putin, that's not Christian. That's a form of Christian nationalism. Vladimir Putin, the good Christian authoritarian dictator that he is, please. So, anyway, as always, protect your peace. Peace and shalom to you.
Love this video? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @Meidas Touch and help us blow past 1 million followers.